Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just going to give it a few moments there to let everybody get into the webinar room. Really happy that you're all here.
I always forget in webinar mode that you can't always see people, and I was gonna ask Nikki to say a few jokes, so I'll listen.
Yeah, that's true. I was just realizing that. So I was like, where are the people? Okay,
Yeah,
let
need a
me.
couple knock knock jokes. Yeah, I'm just watching the attendee
No.
list. It's slowly growing, which is incredible. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're just watching the list here, waiting to get to that number close to our RSVP list. So we know everyone's here before we get started.
Awesome. No one's here, Nikki. Feel free to speak freely.
Is that true, John?
I see some folks saying hello in the chat. Super excited to be here. Looking forward to the session. That's awesome. Got some folks mentioning where they're from. We got lots of little parts of the island and Labrador joining today, which is incredible.
I love it. Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
All right, I'll probably give it another minute and then we'll get started. And as folks continue to trickle in, they'll join in on the conversation.
Awesome. Perfect. You tell me, Jess, when I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I got a nice little intro to tee you up there, Joanna. Don't worry.
Oh, cool. Amazing.
Okay, incredible. So I'm going to get us started so that we don't dive into any of the time that our incredible guests have here today. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jess Jones. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Programming and Evaluation here at Enlo. And I'm so pleased to have you with us today for the Sales Accelerator information session. So today's session introduces a program designed to help women entrepreneurs build a stronger sales foundation, one that brings structure, clarity, and confidence to how you reach your customers and grow your revenue. Sales can often feel overwhelming or uncertain, but with the right framework and support, it becomes a powerful, sustainable driver of business growth. And that is exactly what this program aims to offer. We're thrilled to be partnering with Joanna Brown. Give a little wave, Joanna, founder of Rivet and the creator of the Sales Blueprint Builder. Joanna's expertise in sales strategy, market readiness, and commercialization has supported businesses across multiple industries, and her approach helps entrepreneurs move from reactive selling to intentional strategic action. And we're super grateful to have her leading this initiative with us. We're also fortunate to have two exceptional entrepreneurs with us today who've experienced Joanna's process firsthand. First, I'd like to introduce Nikita Candiala, founder of Nucleic Biologics. Thanks, Nikki, for giving a wave. And then Courtney Howell, founder of Seven Fathoms Seaweed Skincare. Thanks, Courtney. Their stories will give you a real grounded sense of how this program can support businesses at different stages in different industries and facing very different challenges. Today, Joanna is going to walk you through a high level overview of the Sales Accelerator, what's included, how the program's structured, what you can expect if you would choose to apply for the January cohort, which we hope you do. And then we'll hear from Nikki and Courtney before opening the floor for a Q&A to hear from all of you on your burning questions. So thanks again for joining us. We're excited to share this opportunity with you. Joanna, it's over to you.
Thank you, Jess. That is a great intro. And thanks again to Courtney and Nikita for joining. I know they're very, very busy, and I always love to chat with them and hear their story. So one thing that I wanted to mention is that when I first chatted with Enlo, they said, we have these great programs kicking off. We are really engaged. We're putting lots of supports around helping founders, but we want to do more. And so any organization that's kind of putting that out there saying, but we want to do more and we want to support our companies more, I'm all in. So my background is in tech sales. I've sold maybe, close to $60 million worth of products and services over the last 15 years. I've helped companies who are raising, I think we're up to about $20 million. And across a lot of different industries. And I say that because I have, fallen into every sales challenge that head first. So I've hit a lot of pitfalls along the way. And when I was working for a US based company in what I would have considered a dream job, and it really was an amazing opportunity, I just thought there has to be a more practical way. This was kind of riding the wave out of the pandemic, and everything in selling had kind of changed. And I just thought there's got to be a more practical way to approach sales now that things have changed. And I really kind of like root everything that I do in that. And I wanted to help female founders. And so that was a big part of why I kicked off Rivet. My background is mostly in the sales commercialization space, doing products and services. And I think we have a really healthy balance here today. So what we were thinking is we'd kind of kick it off. I'll tell you about the program. And then we're going to talk with Nikki and Courtney, who honestly, I'm mostly here to see. They're amazing. Nikki started Nucleic Bio, which is a microbiome gut health product that she sells via gut health kits. And I believe they have a Black Friday sale on right now. And Courtney started Seven Fathoms, and you may have seen her on Dragon's Den recently. And she took seaweed, which we know is along our coastlines in a bounty, and she turned that into a sustainable skincare product. And so I'm so excited to chat with them. I've worked with them over the last few years, and it's been a complete pleasure. So we're going to hear from you folks soon, but I kind of wanted to introduce why we're here today and what I think is important when it comes to selling. So my goal is to help companies commercialize, and that can be go from 0 to 100. That can go from 0 to 1 million. That can go from 1 million to 5 million. I want companies to be able to grow and scale. And I do think that you can really right size your approach. So do you need absolutely everything to hit your first, 50K or your first 500K? You need what's right for you in the market you're selling into the people you're trying to reach. And I think there's a very pragmatic approach you can take to doing that. So one big piece I'll start with is that there is a lot of supports when it comes to SMB. Sometimes we feel good about that, sometimes we don't. But we're still seeing a high failure rate, right? So early stage companies, 70% will fail in the first 10 years. But all the research, I mean, there's lots of challenges along the way that we'll talk about. You have cash flow issues, you don't know if your sales, you're doing the right thing at the right time. The research really points to it's all about product market fit. And what that means is, can you get to the right customers at the right time and have the right value proposition for them? And so that is kind of the underlying approach to everything we do in sales now that works is I call it value-based selling, but it's not about that high volume reach out. It's really about having meaningful, intentional discussions with the right folks. And that is what the Blueprint Builder is all about, which is a tool I started to build out after I had worked with maybe 100 companies one-on-one, very manual. I started to build out a tool called the Sales Blueprint Builder to start to kind of automate and find some efficiencies in some of this early diagnostic piece in finding the right customers. So I will say, why is it hard to grow? Well, the market is noisy. I mean, we're in the age of AI, post-pandemic, it's a different world. And so, I look at the sales lens. Well, if you go to, improve your sales, you're going to be swamped by a lot of options, right? So if you're this one company over here, how do you differentiate yourself amongst a landscape? So we have to put ourselves in terms of the buyer's shoes, right? I look at construction. There are so many different products and services that are sold into construction, as an example. How do you differentiate when you're the CEO of a company and you're getting 8 companies reach out to you just around the lending piece of your construction business, right? Like differentiation really matters. I look at marketing. It's so hard to sell right now because this market is noisy that you can't fit everything on this page. I couldn't zoom in any further. It's blurry because it's hard to get to the right people at the right time. I also then went and found some travel agents. So if you're in Toronto and you want a travel agent, how do you differentiate and how do you make sure that you're getting to the right people to grow your business if you're a customer everything kind of looks the same from the outside. So how do you really kind of stand out? Um, and then I took interior designers, which is a natural next step, around Niagara on the Lake, which is a small city, right? And there's so many options. And so again, just the idea that we might know our business inside and out, and it's so clear to us who we're reaching out to and why. But if you put yourself in your customer's shoes, it's really got to be, we really, really understand what's happening with them, and we know how to reach them in a way. And there's ways to do that where you don't have a huge marketing budget, where you don't have a huge sales team. I mean, we're really kind of, I'm going to say, like thinking scrappy when we're thinking about growing. Um, so one of the big challenges that I see working with early stage, three big things always come up. Finding the right customers, and not just the right type of business, but the right person to talk to in that business. That can vary. Um, I call it founder-led sales, but if you're the owner of a business, you are doing operations, you're doing everything. You're the chief everything officer, and you are handling everything. And you know what? There's lots of burning fires probably on the product and internal side. There's probably not as many burning fires on the sales side if we're not reaching out or we're not quite at that stage of scale. And so, with a limited team and time, how do we make the very most of what we're doing? And then misaligned outreach, which is super common. And so just, like who you're reaching out to and what channels you reach them through, are really going to improve your chances for success. And then, the cost of not knowing, the cost of kind of hitting those roadblocks yourself, it's time wasted, and time is the most valuable thing for any company, whether you're in growth mode or whether you're scaling. I call my thing the shiny objects everywhere. Everything seems interesting, and people will give you ideas the more you grow, and that seems like an interesting avenue. But you've got so much time and resources. So where are you going to spend it that you're going to get the highest value for your return? And then I always talk to a lot of founders who they are working so hard. I mean, everyone is working so hard in their business. And at some point, though, how do we take that and we work on the business as well? And so I really believe that we don't need to feel overwhelmed on the sales side as long as we're kind of taking a bit of like a practical approach. And as long as the effort reflects your goals, the effort of what has to happen to hit 50 grand or 100 grand is not the effort that has to happen or the team that will be in place to hit 1 million. And so, I really think taking that pragmatic approach is really important. So I started building. I consult on the sales side, but I started building the sales blueprint builder because oftentimes people would come to me and they would say, we need more deals in the door, we need more revenue, or we're having hard time getting meetings booked. We can't quite find our stride essentially in a repeatable way. And I would say, okay, great. And you kind of want to start at step three, but in almost every scenario, we had to go back to step one, which was really the basics around like who are you really trying to reach and why is that, and what are you bringing to the table? What is your value? And what's the best way to reach them? And so to do that kind of step one, step two work, I'll say that can be a really time-consuming manual process. So typically that's, a month to 3 months of back and forth. And it is high value because it kind of sets up everything you need to build your sales engine on ultimately. But it is, 3 months of effort, or 3 months of time even. We don't have time like that to waste. And so this is where I started looking at my process, and I started thinking, what can we automate here? And that's where I started with the Sales Blueprint Builder. So I'm going to give you a quick little demo there in a second, but everything in the Sales Blueprint Builder is built on frameworks that I've used to successfully help companies grow. It's very value based. It kind of assumes that you don't have everything yet. So it is for early stage. I think when you're starting to grow and scale a little bit more, it's maybe more interesting in the looking at new opportunities or markets side of the shop. And so essentially, just what I said, we're going to identify your market, we're going to talk about it, we're going to go through, we're going to make sure we're hitting people in the right way, and ultimately making sure you have coverage. So I think this is a big piece, right, around making sure you have coverage because not all deals will close when you think they're going to, but that's okay, right? We just need to make sure we have the right coverage. So the other thing I'll mention is that my real focus is always around revenue growth. Like I judge success around revenue growth. There's lots of other successes you'll have along the way, and customer acquisition is part of that. If I had to choose between customer acquisition and revenue growth, I kind of veer towards revenue growth, but that's always a bit of a toss up too, right? Some people are like, no, widening my customer base is more important right now. But that's really kind of, I think, what's doing. And my own personal belief and what I'm really trying to do is also I want founders to feel confident that they're taking the right steps. So one big thing I'll say is, I- maybe one out of the last 100 founders I've worked with had a sales background, but they figured it out. And so I want them to feel confident moving forward. And then the very last thing I think I'll show you, and then I'll show you the tool, is just around what this program is kind of laid out to do. So the one thing is you're going to get a year access to the sales blueprint builder. So I'll show you what that looks like in 1 second, but you'll get your own dedicated login. You're the only one that will log into your instance of it, to your portal. And you can run your own kind of market intelligence reports. We are going to be rolling out updates throughout the year. So you'll see all those updates come through. And then the next piece of it is that we want to do 5 one-on-one sessions with every company that signs up. So if you think about that, you get access to the tool. You can run continuously your reports as much as you like, and then you meet with me. So if it was me, I would say, great, log into the tool, run a diagnostic, then let's talk about it. And in that one session, you're probably saving about a month of dialogue back and forth that would have to happen. And so then we meet, and then, we can meet as often, well, up to 5 times throughout the year. That might be 5 times really quickly. That might be, hey, I want to go try this out and come back to you. Whatever works for folks' schedules. This is the part where Enlo was really like, we want to do more. So I said, the sales blueprint builder, and they said yeah, but also more one-on-one. So I thought that was awesome. And then the other piece around that is that I'm going to create a Slack community. So we're actually going to start it in the new year, and it's going to be for founders, maybe heads of sales, or whoever's kind of leading your sales, if you do have anyone. And it's going to be a group, so you can ping people and ask people questions. There's lots of people who are using the same tools or need help in similar ways or trying different campaigns or going to the same events, right? And so I really think there's a lot of power in that kind of community. It's going to be all sales focused. I'm also going to make sure that there's really kind of updated content. There'll be an Ask Me Anything section in there. And I think we can kind of start building that out. And the goal is to kind of to build that out wider than the Newfoundland and Labrador, but we're going to start there. So happy to answer any questions on that at the end as well. But with that, I'm gonna show you the tool. Okay, you guys can still see my screen? I'm gonna assume yes, because I actually can't see any of you. So Um, so this is the sales blueprint builder. So if you can imagine, you've already logged in, and this is saying, "Hello, Joanna," who is the test user. This is my user account, and it's gonna walk you through. So it's meant to be very hands-on guided process. And so what you do there is you kind of start with go to my high impact segments. So I'm going to pull up, let me find my notes here real quick. I'm going to pull up my, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to run one on Rivet. So my company name is Rivet. My target segment and industry, I'm going to say, is SMB companies. product and service offered. So I'm going to put this in. Oh, it is an upstream commercialization tool. It's really designed to help early stage companies understand their high impact segments. Um, but just, you can add more information, but I also like to test it with less information as well. And I ran this through maybe 100 or so companies in the last 3 months. And so this next round that we're kind of building out is based on some of that feedback. So I look forward to getting everyone's feedback as well as they start to use it. Some of the key differentiators, so I mentioned some of these, but it's built for early stage, understanding that, company owners are doing it themselves or have small sales teams doing it. The framework is all built on current day sales best practices, mixed with a pragmatic approach. So that's kind of the tool. It is direct to consumers. So if you're selling to both, if you're selling to direct to consumers or direct to businesses, you really should have two streams of how you kind of approach those companies. And so you can run a report on each if you really wanted to. I am direct to business. And then I don't have other considerations, so I'll just put that in. And then my website is this. And it's okay. A lot of people say my website isn't great. My website is not great. It doesn't matter. It's just kind of using it for context. So we're going to submit that, and then essentially you view your report. So that's going to generate there now, but I'm going to switch over to show you what that looks like. So it's going to kind of start to identify, it's going to provide a synopsis of your value prop. It's going to start to identify where you provide the highest value to. When I started building this out, really I thought, if we could get to 75%, that's good because you don't ever take a strategy and take it to the bank, right? You take a strategy and you debate it and you iterate it. And this is meant to do that. And so, this is everything in here is around like, debate that, like, is that really where you want to focus? Why is that? And then it'll always give you three segments. The tertiary markets are kind of like things to consider. So there may be value there, but it might not be the most obvious. But if you really had to pivot, it might be interesting for you to look at. It'll start to pull the types of players that you should consider, or personas, and said another way. And it'll start to do pain points, solution offer, differentiators, and sample proof points. So I'm building a lead gen team now for a big company, and we're still doing this type of exercise. So when you're building that lead gen approach, if it's like in a scalable way, you're looking at the market segment, the people you're talking to, what do you think they really care about? And then you're working towards how do you prove it? Not everyone can really prove it yet, doesn't have all the metrics. That's okay. The point is that we know we need to get there. And that might be testimonials, but these are things that give you big impact. And then the other piece I'll show here is just, yeah, tertiary markets. So other ones to consider where you might be able to pivot your business that would have high impact. And then it'll pull it in a value proposition. So that's kind of a snapshot of like if I was putting my own tool through it, but if I was going to go sell the Sales Blueprint Builder, this is a really great diagnostic. Now, if I were to go to step two, I would create a bit more lead gen. So now we start to layer on our actual revenue goals and our customer acquisition goals on top of that. I'll show you a few more examples. One thing is, so actually, Courtney, I ran 7 Fathoms because again, I'm operating with like you don't always need all of the information. You can kind of pull what's out there. So I'm just going to pick one section. So one thing I think is interesting is that there's a bit of a competitor table here, and it might be just who's in the space. And so I think that's another piece that is interesting to our story around how do we differentiate? Well, we also have to know who's in the market, and competition is great. That means there's a need, but it's not only how would we differentiate, but also who's here and how do we differentiate from them. And so all of this is kind of like the things we start to layer in, I would say, to any kind of sales approach. Let's see, what other example did I pull? Oh, this is still you, Courtney, but I ran the lead generation side of the shop and I went down to channel recommendations. And so if you're selling direct to consumer, for instance, it'll start to give you options beyond website and things where your customers may be, And so that direct to consumer versus direct to business will vary. And so we want to make sure we're hitting people in the right channels. One other example I'll show is so I actually ran this tool through Boston University's. They had an incubator program of student companies, but honestly, those companies were really impressive. And so this one company was called Busy Bee Refill. They were selling direct to consumers, and they were a kind of like retail food and beverage sustainability provider. I ran them through that. So they were really focused on like eco-conscious consumers. And so we ran their high impact segments, and there's lots of good information in there. But I think maybe also helpful is when I look at their lead generation strategy, really understanding, the sales cycle is also helpful. If you're going to sell, how long does it take generally to get in front of folks? Direct to consumer is a little different, direct business to business. I'm sure, Nikki, you're selling into certain types of your companies versus your first online was a different sales cycle. And so, just starting to understand what that may look like. But for these folks, they were based in Boston and they only wanted to be at Boston events. And so we would have ran that as part of it. And so it provided some interesting events that they might be interested in going to because it really kind of could be a way to amplify their message or talk to their customers. And so I'm kind of handpicking a few things to show you here because I don't want to overwhelm, but really there's information along the way where you're saying, yes, I do think that this is a really interesting segment, and I think these are going to be our main customers. And now we're saying, how do we go test that out? So step one, run your diagnostic, agree, disagree. Step two, meet with me and let's debate it. And then let's talk about, it's almost like adding in another personal layer to what your outreach and strategy might look like. And then because I was on the phone with my partner's grandmother, she made me run hers. And so I will show you what hers looked like. So this is Crafty Granny Annie's. This is her craft store, and I'll show you. So she told me, Joanna, tell them it's Crafty Granny Annie's. She told me that her product was. So she told me that her segment was craft markets. She told me that her product was homemade gifts and crafts, and she's from Hotchkiss, Colorado, which might have 150 people in it, in the mountains. And I said, "What's your differentiator, Granny?" And she said, "It's all homemade by me, and I have an active Facebook group, Joanna, and I talk to my customers all the time." I said, "That is awesome," and honestly, she's kind of killing it. So this would give her, right, kind of a bit of an overview around what that looks like. Again, just kind of getting into the weeds. It matters around who your customers are and where they are. So I did say that you could sell elsewhere, but she seemed very happy with what she was doing, which I was happy with too. So I am happy to take any questions on that, or we can save them to the end. I also am really excited to start chatting with Nikki and Courtney. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So if you do have any questions, you can drop them in there, and I will make sure that I keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, Courtney and Nikki, thank you for being here. Maybe Courtney, maybe you can kind of introduce yourself and tell us about Seven Fathoms.
Sure. I'm Courtney Howe, CEO of Seven Fathoms. And at Seven Fathoms, we harvest seaweed sustainably off of our coast. We've developed an extraction process that captures the bioactivity in certain species of seaweed, and we formulate them in high volumes in our skincare so that our customers can have high impact from the products we produce. And that's basically who and what we are. And it has definitely been a journey to understand who our customers are and how we can differentiate ourselves in the marketplace too. And Johanna has been a great help with that as well.
Oh yeah, I planted them to say nice stuff about me. No. Dr. Nikki, tell us about yourself and NuClick.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nikita Kindyala. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Nucleic Biologics. So originally, I'm from a research background, so a lot of science, so molecular cancer biology, and I did my PhD in that space. And then today we are talking about sales. I don't know how a research or the scientist is talking, in the maybe that is why I'm here, like the transitioning or trying to understand. Like you can do it. If I can do it, I think everybody can do it. So. Yeah, regarding the company, we work in the space of microbiome. So, by the term of it, there are a lot of microorganisms that are surrounded by around us, and also they are in us. A lot of times we think that these little tiny organisms are harmful to us, but they also do a lot of good things. So, we have been studying these microorganisms to understand how they benefit us. To understand that, we have launched two products, Kachek and Vivo, especially for people who are going through a lot of symptoms when they go through IBS or the IBD, or in general for women who are going through hormonal imbalances, when they go through symptoms like bloating, diarrhea, constipation, or even the mood changes through the menstruation, all the PMS symptoms, and also transitioning from perimenopause to menopause, how these microbiomes are influencing them, and what they can do about it by looking at their personalized diet is what we do. So we have launched these products. They're out there. If anybody is interested, as Joanna said, it's on sale. But if you want to learn more, I'm always here. So that's all we do at Nuclear.
That's all you do. That's amazing. Um, and so, Courtney, I mean, I think you also mentioned, right, you're doing full in-house production. Like you are harvesting seaweed, you are based in Greats Cove, and you are selling across Canada. What is your background? Like, how did you start to get into this? Did you come from sales? Tell us about that.
Definitely did not come from sales. We had a little experience with in business because we still have another business here in Greats Cove. So I feel like that first business was kind of like the starting place to learn how to do what we're doing now, and to not be afraid of it, not to be intimidated of it. Because there's definitely a period of like, how am I going to do this? You know, I have this product, I really believe in it, but now where do I go from here? Um, so I think we learned a bit of that in our first business. Definitely not everything, still learning as we go every single day. Um, but that first business actually incubated Seven Fathoms. So we had over, I don't know, 10 years or so, had we were in the tourism space. So we had those initial customers who could test our product. And those were our first people who gave us feedback on what we were doing. And we had like such direct communication with them. So we started really understanding who these people were, what what they enjoyed about the product, how they used it, and that kind of started that whole process of collecting the data of who the customer is, to understand how we could take that to the next level. So it really was that first business that nurtured our initial customers and gave us the validation and confidence to continue that and take it on.
And what did that look like from some of your first assumptions? Like when you were getting your first 100 customers in the door, who did you think you're like, yes, this is where we're serving? And is it still those same people?
Well, I think for us, like what we didn't want is to be seen as a beauty company
Right.
because of our origin story. You know, we got into this work because of the impact it had on a problem we were having in our own family with the skin. Um, it made a big impact on an issue that my husband was having. It changed his quality of life. It changed our family's quality of life. And we knew as we were growing, we could easily go into the beauty um, area, but that's not what we wanted because that wasn't our origin. So it was more about understanding, you know, taking all this information, who's buying our product, what's their impact, what is their feedback, and how do we position ourselves to not be seen as beauty. And it took us a while to get there, but we started to lean into skin barrier care. And I think when we figured out like that was our space, because regulated under cosmetic regulations, so we have to stay within our regulation guidelines. But how do we speak about ourselves in a manner that lets people know that we're not just about, you know, facial skincare, although it does function in that way. So once we found our place within skin barrier care, it was really like it was a launching off place for a lot of getting to know who our customers really were and how we could speak to them.
And that's amazing, right? I mean, holding not only just like what does your product do, but your own unique point of view. And you're saying, you know, your origin story and this is what we value. That's also, I mean, that's part of your differentiation, right? That's where you play and kind of if that evolves, I'm sure, but not the origin, right? Like that stays true.
Yeah, I think if we hadn't stayed with our origin,
Yeah.
you know, that's where your passion is. That's where your purpose is for doing this. But it might take a little while to find that how that fits within your segment and differentiation.
Yes. Okay, so Nikki, so when you were kind of starting things out, like tell us about how you kind of first launched NuClick and what was that like? You went direct to consumer first?
Yes, we did go to direct to consumer. So, but I think we had 2 years because we started in midst of pandemic. We did our R&D to develop the product. So in that time period, we were also doing our interviews with people to understand where this will fit because the kind of product is it appears like it fits everywhere. And that was a big challenge for us in order to understand where exactly this will be applicable in terms of usage. So before entering, we thought it's the healthcare, right? So healthcare people, healthcare system is where it will fit. And we understood the complexity of it in those R&D days and how it takes a longer time and our mentors the interaction with people just helped us understand that that is not the place to launch a product and when there is an option of reaching direct to consumer I think that's the way to go as this will be more applicable for people who not necessarily through the healthcare but then directly and understand the usage and also a lot of processes that needed to be refined at the time. So when we went to the direct to consumer as well, launch time, I think we launched this product at the regatta. So
Oh, amazing.
yeah, that was very interesting. We announced that on VOCM. A lot of people actually drop by to just have that interaction. They were curious. They were supporting because it was a biotech company coming from Newfoundland, and they wanted to have that conversation. They were curious on how it helps gut health. So several people dropped by to have that conversation. So which amplified in terms of how to reach people and understand, also hear what their problems are in those terms. So apart from the interviews that we have done, just entering into people, I mean consumer side of things, helped us. And also during the R&D, we have integrated 75 people into the city as a citizen scientist to develop the process itself. So that interaction also helped us in order to understand if whatever we're providing, where it will fit. So that's how we got into the IBS or the IBD space or the GI space, right? So, and social media, that's a different game to play. And still, I think it's a ever evergreen process that you have to figure out. And then, as you said, it's in the topics you have mentioned about how noisy the market could be. So when we launched on the social media, coming from the research background, the one thing that helped in there was validating the data. So we were on the data, looking at the data, like where exactly this is being sold, or so we used to play with the data. So we wouldn't put all of our money. We used to play with a very less amount of dollars to understand for which ad people are understanding this product, or for which kind of messaging is really clicking. So we have played in between because we've considered this as a wellness side of it. Is still a wellness, but then when we portray as a wellness, people are not able to understand what problem it's being addressed. So we had to look in the perspective of problem, like what problem it can address. So since just looking at the gut health, not everybody gets everything out of that, understanding the product or what the solution could be. So a lot of play around the messaging and validating the data helped us to get those, the initial customers. And since I think the launch time itself, we got those. But then the real challenge was the sustenance of how you maintain that and how you're going to achieve the further sales, I think. So yeah, the first year we were looking just into the D2C and playing around the social media. And even social media, we just reached out to people who we know as a marketing agency, and they were helping us to establish that. But consistency is very important. It has to go. We learned it in a hard way, but um, whether you're selling it out there or the appearance of your product out there on the social media and how you are being out there, it all matters. But yeah, we learned it in different way, like by experience, not by a curriculum. But I think most of us learn like that. But yes, that was our experience with
And
the reading.
one thing that you said too really early on, Nikki, that I think is really important is that sometimes your white whale might be healthcare, right? Or you're like, I know that I could provide so much value, but it might not be where you can start because you
Yes.
just don't have the proof points or the
Yeah, the enough
testimonials.
data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I talked
Case
to
studies. Yeah.
exactly. So you might have to say, you know what, for revenue purposes, because I need to get that data and I need the ability to interact with customers, I'm going to start here and I'm going to test it in a meaningful way, and then we're going to work towards what this looks like. And I think that's so smart. Okay, Courtney, I have a question for you. So, I mean, I assume from when you first launched Seven Fathoms, it was easy. All sales were steadily growing. When did you? When did you first start to feel though, you know what? Like I think we're starting to get it. Like I think we're starting to see that growth.
So I think early on, when we knew we were going to break Seven Fathoms away, what became Seven Fathoms from our other business, start brand building right away. Um, so that was very important so people could start to recognize you, start collecting testimonials as quickly as you can, um, and then start validating. So validating, the extracts, validating the products, validation, validation, validation.
Yeah.
And we were it's very hard because you want to get into retailers. Like you said, your ideal might be health and wellness stores. For us, it might be partnering with naturopaths and pharmacies, but it's really hard as a new product to get in there because they need to know you're validated as well. So really you have to go, or we did have to go direct to consumer first. Um, and so I think it took probably 3 years or so to start doubling our sales direct to consumer. But that's like you're doing everything all at once. You're doing brand building, you're collecting those testimonials, you're nurturing your customers. Like it is a lot of direct contact with your champions so that you can get their feedback so that you can use their feedback to validate it with others who will then start to try the products. And then once we started doubling the sales, when we started getting retailers starting to approach us, it was like, okay, I think I think something's happening, even though we still had a lot of work to do around, who are our targets. When we started getting others starting to recognize the brand and coming to us, we're like, okay, we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, and one thing I think that can help too is just around like, things that can lend some credibility is around, associations and events and things like that, like being in the places in which people would say, "Oh, that's the right space, I get it." I think another big thing, and when I think about both of you actually, is that you do hard things and you kind of continuously do hard things. And so like Courtney, you just did Dragon's Den, and so maybe tell us about that. That's not an easy thing to go on national TV and pitch.
And it wasn't a planned experience. So that's an
Even better.
example of just taking an opportunity where opportunity comes. Because you can plan, and you always have to do that. But that opportunity came about because we were doing a wholesale show in St. John's, and they just happened to be doing auditions there that same day in the same building. And so after the day was done with the wholesale show, there was still 45 minutes left for auditions. And we were like, oh, we might as well. We might as well just try. And we did. It was not planned at all. So we did not have, and like you have to just go out and try, even though you're not a perfected, you don't have a perfect pitch or approach. You just have to go in and do it and risk risk it all.
That's
um, yeah, so we just took the risk, and it was not polished, it was not perfect, but we had our product, and they could see who and what we were, and I guess it was appealing. We got a call the next week, and we had 3 weeks to prepare, and it changed everything. The
amazing.
the whole experience, that exposure. And the most important thing about that exposure is we planned and I think we executed well on how we planned, but we went in there um, open hearted and very vulnerable. And it resonated with people. And I think that's why we're having the reaction that we're having because we went in there with our stats and our facts, but we went in there, the story connected. And you have to have your story.
Yeah, you had your unit economics ready to go, and they wanted to know about your origin, which is what you've held true to this whole time. And that's one big thing, right? In a world of like polished right now, where every email can be run through AI and every email can be perfect, I think people want authenticity and they would value that over anything at this point, I think, right?
It's a demand.
Yeah. Okay, Nikki. So I mean, I love both of you guys because you're both in growth mode, right? And it hasn't been necessarily easy along the way. But like, Nikki, can you tell us a little bit about what that growth has looked like for you? Tell us about that.
So yeah, growth necessarily. I mean, in last 3 years, we had 50% growth every time, every year, like in terms of sales. But then I think this year mainly, we were transitioning or focusing on two main things. One is what that B2B would look like and how we can reach that B2B and expand into it, and also diversification of the product. Since we were doing the R&D and focus on women's health, and that's a kind of like a biggest differentiator for us. I think the point I've mentioned about being the space being noisy. So how do you differentiate as you grow, as a and how you want to serve in the space differently and uniquely. So considering that we have launched a new product, so that's a growth for us as we have focused on a particular segment and a market there, and also it's addressing a particular problem that is not being addressed in the current world. So, and also in terms of B2B, it's a long process, long sales cycle process for B2B, but then it's more sustainable. We've been doing R&D in that space for a good enough time that helped us to, a transition. So that I would consider as and we were successful in that. So yeah, that was a real growth for us. And then we continue to do what we are doing in that space of B2B, as I see. D2C is ongoing. It has been supporting us, but yeah, eventually we want to be that B2B side of things, hit that B2B side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right? I mean, really, I think I see a lot with folks is that broad, we can't be everything to everyone. And so
Yeah.
kind of we start with broad strokes because we're still figuring it out and we're figuring out where it is. But I really feel like not only does it need to be authentic, but if people don't see themselves as the exact type of person you want to talk to, then that's also kind of, right? It's got to be exactly kind of targeted. And so what I see typically is you kind of can pick two lanes at once. You
Hmm.
can have a primary lane and you can be exploring a secondary lane.
Yeah.
Even if you had big sales team, you'd still be stretched to do that effectively, right? And so
Yes.
part of what I want to reinforce using the blueprint builder is a little bit around that, like how do we kind of like pick a lane and try it, or pick two lanes and try it? But that's probably where you're starting, where you're going.
Yes, that's true. And I think that should always be the case, even though, on the front we are working on one case, but then there should be a plan B that's ongoing, right? So eventually it will click. If you think that this is not the space, because let's say insurance, we thought insurance is no go, and whoever we talked to, we were like, you're never going to go there. We were laughed at. So but then today here we stand collaborating with an insurance company, but it took time, right? At the time when we thought of it, it was an impossible thing. But then when you're working on the background, it helps. So I think anything you think that there's a potential, because you had those interactions with your customers to understand that there is a requirement, and you see also there is a potential from your research. Yeah, just don't do the plan B because you thought. I think there should be a valid research as well on that. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so for anyone if you want to start dropping in any questions, if you have any questions for Courtney and Nikki, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to answer anything. I'm just having a double check. Well, there's lots of love for this group. So I see, okay, one question I see was the info generated, from the info I sent in, was the report generated from that, and it was. So really that's the inputs you saw are the inputs that resulted in the report. Just because we're testing minimal amounts, the more info you give it, it's always the better. But really it's kind of that's the framework. It's always going to kind of build itself in. As I wait for a few questions to come in, okay, I have one more question for each of you, if it's okay. Okay, so Courtney, people always say, right, people make a great second time founder because you learn, and like you're saying that you've done. If you were going to do it again, or you're going to launch a whole new product in a different space, what would you be thinking about on the sales side?
On the sales side, I think I'm glad we started building brand presence right away, for one. And I would be more mindful of collecting data early on, And like I would know the questions to ask now, like, and I think that's something you and I have talked about a lot. Like, when we first started working together, there were we generated you helped us generate these lead questions to ask our early adopters. I think I would have started that process a lot earlier. I think it would have saved us time, and it would have just made things a little bit more clear a little earlier. If I wouldn't have been afraid to really just go after those early adopters and just question them, why are you using this? Why does this work? Just getting any and all feedback so that we could take that to the next step.
That's awesome. And I think that's helpful at like every stage of growth too, right? It's a skill. It's definitely a thing that gets better as you go, right?
Yeah, I wish I wouldn't have let my shyness get in the way in the beginning.
Oh, listen, you're doing great. Nikki, what about yourself? If you're gonna launch something tomorrow, what are you thinking about?
So I think the market research, or even in terms of the market agency that we are going to work, because if I consider that I have this experience, then I would put it in a different way. As social media for the direct to consumer, especially, the social media works differently, and how you want to put your product out there, and how you are assigning, or those money or the ad spend that you're doing, and how consistency was very important. So there were gaps for a few months, and then we had difficulties with the agency, and then that decision making in order to do that. So it all had a delay. So that wouldn't happen if I'm launching now. So I would be more careful, and it would be more strategic. So yes.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, one question that came in was there something that surprised you? Was there something that surprised you when you started, building your business and selling? And we might have maybe a minute each, and then we got to hand it to Jess.
I think for me, the surprise was selling is not everybody's cup of tea. Not that I thought I'm a salesperson, but then when you are into it, you really don't realize a few of the things that it is a separate category. You have to understand how you lay out things and strategically put it out there. As Jana earlier mentioned, that there are certain founder sales, but then in the long run, I think it has to be some skilled salespeople who should be looking at it. As you see that there's a pivot, there is a incoming, or there's a traction, so you can multiply it by putting it strategically and then applying, whether if it's a D2C, applying the social media ads strategically, and then pushing those sales and the targets that needs to be. So that, yes, was not really aligned, or was in place for us for a good enough time. So then you don't really see why things are not moving further. So yeah, that is something. Yeah. Uh,
Awesome. What about you, Courtney?
I think in the beginning, like I thought we understood who our customers were. And I think, the more we spent time really, asking those lead gen questions to our early adopters, you started to understand that they were purchasing for reasons beyond what you thought. And that was really helpful when we started thinking about, okay, what kind of stores would we be a fit in, and also helping on that direct to consumer side. Yeah, just I think just making assumptions about why people were purchasing your product um, was not necessarily why they were doing it for many different reasons.
Yeah, it's a great point. And truly like when I work with early stage, I've been in it building and I work with big companies and none of that what you're all saying ever goes away. Like there's always room to be doing it and I think it's such a good reminder. So thank you so much. Jess, I know we're right at time there. If there's anything you wanted to mention, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And Joanna, I'll just direct your attention to the chat. There's one other question
Oh,
in there.
great.
If you wouldn't mind just maybe answering that in the chat as I kind of wrap us up so that person gets the answer they're looking for. So thank you so much, Joanna, and a heartfelt thanks, of course, to Nikita and Courtney for sharing your experiences and offering such an honest look at what the sales blueprint process can help entrepreneurs accomplish. Your willingness to share the insights, the challenges that you both encountered, and overall your growth that's happened helps others here see the real potential and impact of a structured sales strategy. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. Your engagement, thoughtful questions that went in the chat, and interest in this program speak to the dedication that each of you are bringing to your businesses and to your own growth as entrepreneurs. And that's really inspiring to see. I'm pleased to share that the application link for the Sales Accelerator program is now open. Woohoo! And this is going to remain open until December 20th. So if today's session sparked something for you, whether it was the desire for more sales clarity in your business, stronger customer targeting, or a more strategic plan to your business growth, we encourage you to apply. The program officially begins in January, and our Enlo team is here to support you throughout the application process. So please feel free to reach out to your regional business advisor. They'll be more than happy to assist you and answer any questions that you have. And if you don't have a regional business advisor, reach out so we can get you connected with one. Thank you again for being a part of this session. We look forward to potentially working with many of you in the new year, and just have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks
Thanks,
so much,
Nikki and
folks.
Courtney.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I wish you all the best for this program. Yeah.
Awesome.
Lots of love, little hearts popping up. Thanks in the chat. Thanks so much, folks. This was great.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, folks.
Take care.